Rebecca, and this is Davie. We host the Divorce Hub, so thanks for coming back. Today we have a topic that's a little bit heavy, but it's something that came up organically at our last in-person Divorce Hub meeting, which we're in the Kansas City metro area. We asked the question to everybody who was at the support group, raise your hand if you think that addiction played a part in your divorce. Almost 75% of the hands went up across the room, stating that some kind of addiction, whether it was gambling, porn, alcohol, drugs, medicines, played a large role in everybody's divorce. And so because it's something that we both have had experience in, we thought that it was a really good topic to bring up.
Unfortunately, so many marriages that are in peril, whether they're in one of our three phases, pre, during, or after divorce, addiction is just a part of people's lives. And what a lot of co-parenting counselors and relationship therapists point to is that these addictions are typically an exit for the person consumed by that addiction as they're trying to exit the marriage. The exit basically means numbing in a way. You have pain or strife or grief inside your marriage. The unhealthy way to exit from that mentally is to drown yourself in a bottle, a pill bottle, gambling addiction, porn addiction, things like that. That is a sign of that original person who's doing that hurting in some way. What we're here to talk about today is the partners on the receiving end of that addictive, abusive, or neglectful behavior, whether that's for themselves in their relationship or to their children, unfortunately, which happens sometimes.
One thing that I want to paint a picture of here before we even get started is that a lot of times people get addicted to something because they're trying to escape. If you are married to someone who refuses counseling, who refuses to get help, who refuses to admit that they have an addiction, and for years or even decades you've been feeling like this is a problem, we really want to shed a lot of light here in this conversation, and the fact that you and your spouse don't have to agree that their addiction is a problem. This is where we're trying to talk directly to the person who is married to someone. It's almost like there's somebody else in your marriage. This addiction, this person, this thing wasn't a part of your life or wasn't a problem when you first got married, but it is now. Either your partner has admitted that they have a problem and they will or won't seek treatment, and Davie's going to talk about that, or your partner is in denial. We're going to talk about both of those areas today.
Here's the first example, and one unfortunately that we are confronted with too many times is, hey, you're in a marriage and this person has opened up to that other partner and they've said, hey, I have a problem. I have a problem, whether that is an acute problem where it's binge drinking or it's a daily habit. But they say, you know what? I have a problem and I need your help with it. And that's a little bit of a trick leading into it. But hey, I have a problem. Thus the other partner's about to help.
All right, great. So what do I do? Your partner comes to you Monday morning, Sunday night, because they've been drinking all weekend. Hey, I need some help. I don't want to drink anymore. Knowing that's one of the most common addictions, unfortunately, way more common than you or I would have ever thought before we stepped into this divorce space. So just know, if alcohol is not your partner's vice and it's something else and you feel like you're alone, oh my gosh, you're not. You're not alone with there being so many crazy addictions that people get hooked on. It's just an escape. So they found an exit to the marriage, and now I'm coming back to you and I'm saying, hey, I think as a human, I'm just realizing this is a problem in my life. What do I do?
The first thing that you're going to have to do if you're partnered up with somebody, you're in a marriage, and they present that they have an addiction or they have a problem that they can't solve, you first have to don't do what you think to do first. The first thing that you would do in any partnership is say, hey, how can I help? Unfortunately, for that person who is volunteering to help, by this point, that addiction is well known and well documented, and it hurts everybody. And so the person that is willing to help is not just willing to help out of efficacy, but maybe they're desperate and they want the behavior to change. What people do so wrong when they're dealing with an addiction is they try to dive in. And they almost try to become their personal trainer for this addiction, and that is the worst thing you can do. With so many different angles about dealing with people in your life, whether that is through therapy or coaching, everyone tells you that you've got to take care of yourself first and stop trying to control someone else. The first urge that I would teach someone, if they had someone who came to them with an addiction, is I would say, first of all, you've got to take inventory of yourself and your safety first. And one of the big things that's really important is that the first things first is to make sure everyone's safe. Is this person's addiction inhibiting the safety of both individuals in the marriage? Yes or no? If it is, We need to remove ourselves. We need to remove children and take care of a safety measure first. So first things first, let's make sure everyone is safe from an emotional and physical standpoint. Let's make sure the kids aren't going to get in the car with the alcoholic,
Right.
that they're not going to be left alone with the alcoholic. These things need to be addressed. If we can get through physical safety and now we're just living with someone, then we really have to take our hands off the joystick. That is the toughest reality for people to see. But if an addict is going to fix themselves, they have to do it themselves and not under the control or duress of that other partner who may be trying their best to help them. But what you'll find out, they're just doing it for you and not themselves. And someone dealing with this stuff has to do it for themselves and no one else.
Yeah, and if I just think back the last 6 months, people who presented with big alcohol, drug, or partner issues, I can probably think of 10 who've come to us in various stages of divorce or just asking, hey, we have a problem, what should we do? The one case with real success involved one of the partners getting sober. 2 very specific things happened. Number 1, the partner who did not have the addiction modeled the behavior they wanted. The sober partner who would occasionally drink with the spouse decided, I'm done. I am no longer consuming alcohol. That was the problem, that the other spouse was there. And they were clear, hey, I'm not consuming alcohol because I don't feel safe when you do it. And I want to be a good example for you. So I will not be your drinking partner anymore, period. Not going to do it. That was the first thing they did, is they modeled the example that they want. The second thing that happened to really signify success is that the partner with the problem sought outside help. The partner who needed to work on sobriety went and got their own therapist, and they worked through things. It wasn't an in-person treatment, but the last time I talked to this wife, it was about 9 months since her husband had drank. She decided to go sober and told him to figure it out. She drew a very clear boundary, and he did, unlike the other 9 examples I can think of.
I think those are basic boundaries, modeling the behavior. But the tougher one that I think people do is they try to put control mechanisms in place, and they're done with the best intentions,
Sure.
but it doesn't work. Controlling the amount of drinks that someone has by having them check with you, changing the type of drinks. Oh, we're not going to have liquor, we'll just have wine and beer.
We'll only drink if we're out of town.
Going so far as to require that other spouse to submit to testing through breathalyzers and things like that. If you're breathalyzing your spouse, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
You're implementing a layer of control that an addict or alcoholic is designed to try to beat you on. Alcohol, or that vice, is teaching that person to lie, manipulate, cheat, and steal to feed the addiction. So every boundary you put up, every control, every test, every check-in, let me smell your breath, let me breathalyze you. They're going to win, and you're going to be disappointed because it's going to be another failure on top of that.
Okay, so then let me take you back in here, because I assume anybody watching this resonates with this. What do I do? My spouse has told me they have a problem and they've admitted it. What do I do?
Walk with me here on this example. The last time you flew, if you flew with children, the flight attendant told you about the oxygen mask. It's a very simple directive. I always ask people, who are you supposed to put the oxygen mask on? Yourself or your kids? Most people say kids, and you've got it wrong. You have to put the oxygen mask on yourself, because if you can't breathe, you can't help anyone else. And that's the exact same thing when you are dealing with an addiction, someone you live with, you love, or share children with. It is like you cannot breathe. And the only way that you can protect your children and that other person is to be able to breathe yourself. And the format that you have to do with everything that you do is set a layer of boundaries, lower your expectations, create no opportunities for control, and let this person sink or swim, rise or fall on their own. And just have your boundaries and what you will do as a result of their delinquent, risky, abusive behavior. That's all you can do. You're going to have to let go. And that's the biggest thing I can tell you, is to let go, encourage and support, but don't control. Our society has romanticized these interventions through pop culture and TV. While there are some nice elements to a family coalescing and supporting, we think that if we just leverage things against an addict, that's going to fix them. You have to engage in outside resources, counselors, therapists, medical professionals, support groups, to understand the framework by which to live with this addict. Because if you're married to them or you have children with them, they're never going away from your life. The way you approach this person is not a formula. It's a way of thinking about protecting yourself and protecting your children first, as opposed to trying to control everything, which is typically a failed enterprise.
Yeah. And I would just say, to wrap up this piece of what do you do if your partner has admitted that they have an addiction, let their actions have the intended consequences that you've been protecting them from. Let me give you an example. If you go to your family's house over Christmas and your spouse drinks too much, maybe they need to sleep there that night and you and the kids need to go home safely, because the example you want to model for your children is that adults who are so intoxicated that they've chosen to hurt themselves in that way shouldn't be exposed to them in your house. You wouldn't let your best friend come over totally drunk and try to put the kids to bed. There are some boundaries that you need to think about. And the question that I would just ask is, what patterns in our life have I been protecting my spouse from that they need to experience the natural consequences? And then you get yourself in some counseling. I know that you believe that if your partner would just go to counseling, it would fix everything. But what you don't realize is you're the one that really needs the support. You need someone to help you zoom out to look at this in a professional way. So that's my number one advice to everybody who is married to someone who has an addiction. Get yourself in counseling, because that's going to be your oxygen mask. It sets the example. You've stopped drinking and you've gotten into therapy, the two things that you've been asking them to do. If your partner has admitted they had addiction, that's where I would start.
I think your example of letting someone go through the shame of sleeping off Christmas morning, more awful than living with an addict the rest of your life.
We'll see at divorce support group when you end up divorced in 5 years.
At some point, you're going to have to look in the mirror and realize that you're just as much a part of the problem and the enabler as the person opening the bottle.
Now, there's another side to this coin where a lot of people end up that the spouse doesn't know they have an addiction. In this scenario, it's more complicated because a lot of times there's more bargaining. I've picked up on the fact that let's use gambling in this one. I've picked up on the fact that you're spending a lot of our family money gambling and it's becoming a problem. You don't think it's a problem because you've justified it in your head and sometimes you win. But to me, it's a problem. And it wasn't part of this agreement of marriage that we entered into. And I'm done with it. And I've asked and we've talked about it enough times. You know I have a problem with it. What do I do when my partner won't admit or doesn't agree that their behavior is causing pain and trauma in our relationship? Do I have to get them to admit it before we can get anywhere? Or if they haven't admitted it, are there some things that I can start doing?
This is where our society has gotten really caught up in calling people out, whether that's calling someone a narcissist, an alcoholic, or an addict. In all of those situations, when you force a label on somebody, the only effect that typically has is for them to protect that negligent, abusive behavior in some other way. So I really think it's important for anybody watching this that is thinking that they might have someone they're married to that's an alcoholic. Forget the labels. It doesn't matter what they identify. Again, back to the original principles, keep yourself safe,
Right.
keep your kids safe, and make sure you've got a plan and resources so you stop people pleasing, accommodating, and feeling run over, burnt out, and depressed because no one ever sees the world the way that you do. So I think that's really important. It doesn't matter if they call themselves an alcoholic or not. You've got to put some safe behaviors in place for you and or your children, and frankly, your spouse too. This is something that really wrecks marriages and relationships and parent-child relationships, and it's really toxic stuff that our country does not have a good handle on. So it's important to not worry about the label and worry about the actions and what we can do to improve and make sure everybody's safe.
And in all of the marriage counseling I've been through and professionals I've talked with, they say the most important thing in a relationship is that either two people are working towards the same goal or they respect that the other person is working towards that goal. If I'm married to someone with an addiction and they are not in agreement that this addiction is causing problems, that's a hard stop. That is something a marriage counselor would say, hey, you guys are not on the same page here. This is a hard stop divorce issue. This is if someone is choosing an addiction that is hurting you, hurting your kids, setting an example for them that's going to be something that's an issue in the future, you have to make a decision. If they don't see that it's a problem, are you willing to just move on and pretend that it's okay? A lot of people, that answer is yes, until it gets so far that it's hurting you in the same way that it's hurting the people around them. When you're married to an addict, someone with an addiction that's hurting in a way that they have to escape life, you can cover it up to a point. And some people can cover it up for a year. Some people can cover it up for 5 years. Some people can cover it up till there's kids. And some people can cover it up until forever. But If your partner has not admitted that they have an addiction, then what you have to decide is, how long do I want to cover it up? Because there's never going to be a time, and I can say this with 100% confidence, until your partner admits that they have a problem and they seek help, you're going to be living with covering this up. So the question that you have to ask yourself is, how long do you want to cover it up? How long do you want to tell your spouse's parents that it's okay, they don't drink this much, it's only at the holidays? How long do you want to tell your kids, you know what, I know daddy's acting scary right now, I'm going to go put him to bed and we're going to play a game later? How long do you want to cover those things up? And that's really what you have to decide.
As it comes to the scope of a relationship, there are plenty of marriages that survive an addict. It's very possible that an addict does not cause a divorce. It's also very possible that an addiction ends a divorce as well, and everything in between. I've seen couples where someone is an intense Al-Anon, they go every week, they have all of the mechanisms in place to keep themselves safe, their kids safe, and they understand it. They just don't have the gut for divorce. And so they live with it. Groups like this and mentally healthy things are what give people the ability to stand on their own feet and stand up for themselves, and that can result in divorce. And so I just wanted to clarify that dealing with an addict does not automatically spell you to divorce.
No.
We just see that's likely.
One of the most powerful differences that I learned was a simple definition throughout my divorce process, and that was the difference in control versus boundaries.
This is something we deal with in all different spectrums of all the people we talk to. It's a good mentally healthy practice, regardless of what you're dealing with, to figure out the simple definition between control and a boundary.
Okay.
The best way I can describe it is the difference between control and boundary is simply boundaries are what you're going to do or not do as a result of someone else's behavior. And control is an expectation that something you say or do is going to affect how someone else acts. And people often get this confused. They say, if you're going to do this, I'm going to do that. That's still control.
It's kind of manipulation.
It's exactly manipulation. It's leveraging, it's ultimatums, it's all those things. But the best example for dealing with an addict and in all mental health circles is to understand that you have to have boundaries of safety, communication, and emotion. And those boundaries have to determine your sanity and what you will and won't do based on how the world reacts to you. The world is a very scary place, and there's a lot of things out there. So you got to have this discussion about boundaries internally with a professional. You have to practice them, and it has to be intentional. Otherwise, they are porous and they will erode.
When we're talking about having boundaries with an addict versus trying to control an addict, what's important is so many times you don't realize that the two are all mushed together. You've likely spent years with the person that you're married to trying to control, and in some cases successfully controlling, the drinking. If we're just at home on a weeknight, nobody's going to have more than 3 drinks. Well, why did I decide to add that control to your life? Because there was a problem, an addiction, a danger, and I felt like I could control it. I should control it as someone who loved you. That was a way of showing and being a good partner. And what all of the addiction world teaches us is that's control. And it not only hurts you, because now you've lost all the responsibility of caring for your own actions and feeling your own consequences, but it hurts me because now I'm responsible in more ways than I would have been if I had let you get drunk on Tuesday and have as many whiskey shots as you wanted and feel the consequences of your action. So that's where the boundary looks like. The boundary might be, hey, if you drink and start to try to pick a fight with me, I'm going to go sleep in the other room, and that's my boundary. I'm not going to yell at you for drinking. I'm not going to count your drinks. I'm not going to get in a fight with you. My boundary is my action, not your control.
The difference between imposing shame and regret and pressure and fear onto someone, those are all control mechanisms or intended to manipulate, whereas a boundary just says exactly like you said, hey, you're going to get drunk, I'm going to remove myself. Mm-hmm. That's the end of the transaction. Not I'm going to remove myself and pick a fight the next morning and take your phone, look through the grocery bills and give me your credit card. Right. Those are all control mechanisms. What will you do as a result of someone's behavior? Hard stop.
Now, there's some pretty drastic boundaries that I want to give an example of. You just used the phrase, I'm going to take your credit card. This is something that you would hear if there was a gambling problem. A boundary would be, we're going to go ahead and set up separate bank accounts so that you can feel the consequences of your actions with your gambling. I no longer want to have my finances attached to you. My boundary is this isn't a safe decision for me. And whenever I start to let you feel the consequences of your actions, I stop covering it up, because what I've been doing is covering it up. And now we're not going to go on a date on Tuesdays because you went gambling, and maybe that'll teach you. There's a difference in control. You don't get date night with me. And boundary, I set up my own bank account. I had to go get a job, those kind of things.
This is really tough too, because this is your partner, this is your spouse. And so there's an expectation woven into all marriages to some degree. Well, if I'm mad, I need to tell you. And we need to work on that. And we need to deal with that. Again, a little bit of a myth, an urban legend, if you will. Especially with an addict, but really is a good mental health practice. Look, if you're going to drink more than 3 drinks and you're going to get drunk and I'm going to put up that boundary, that's still going to hurt me. I got to deal with that pain on my own, as opposed to pull you into not only battling the addiction, but also soothing my pain, and codependencies are created and things like that. We're not saying that you have to detach from reality and emotion, but as you can see, as you're dealing with an addict, there are so many complexities and nuances about how to deal with them, how to breathe for yourself, how to process your disappointment of the failure and things like that. It takes a lot of work. And I just want to really validate and empathize with all the people that have at different points in their life dealt with people going through addiction. It is not easy. This isn't something where you're going to be able to watch a YouTube video from Rebecca and Davie and go, hey, I got it. You've got to put real resources in place. You've got to be intentional about your behavior, and you've got to practice it day in and day out, because you're going to be challenged by the pain of addiction that doesn't really care what mental health resources you have in your back pocket.
Yeah. I want to switch gears just a little bit, because one of the things that I hear from a lot of men and women, but the 4 or 5 examples that I can think of recently are all parents who are like, hey, I would have left this spouse a long time ago, but we've got kids, and this person can't even care for themselves, let alone, if we end up divorced, care for my kids half the time, and I know they're going to be there half the time, and divorce takes a long time, and I'm simply just putting my kids in danger by divorcing, and so I'm going to stay to protect the kids. And I want to talk very specifically about what that looks and feels like, and some of the dangers that are there if you do stay.
One person is going to absorb the pain caused in the marriage on behalf of the children. Your kids don't want to see you unhappy either. They don't want to see mommy and daddy fighting, mommy and daddy get drunk, mommy and daddy hurt each other or hurt themselves. So if this person is an uncontrollable addict and it is impacting your relationship or their role as a parent, and that's really key too. If their alcohol use, drug use, addiction interrupts what would have been normal relationship or parenting patterns, it's affecting your relationship, and you deserve the opportunity to address it. And so I just think it's really important for people to understand that piece of it. Staying together for the kids, letting yourself be physically or emotionally abused, or letting your children get neglected, is not doing it on behalf of the kids. It's just not. When you can finally find your way through it, whether you choose to divorce this person or not, happiness is on the other side.
One thing they tell us all the time is that courts look at patterns, not perfection. And so if you're somebody that's worried that your spouse is abusing alcohol in a way that's dangerous to the children, if you're not there, you should be out already. And there are resources and things you can put in place so that the children are not in the sole custody of someone who is abusing alcohol in a way that they're unsafe. You can get a guardian ad litem for your children. You can get your children into classes where they start to learn about addiction. And if you think about it down the road, because always when we're in these situations, it feels like there's so much going on, we can't zoom out. If you even take yourself 6 months out from this point right now, and I would challenge you with the idea that you're in therapy, your children have people in their lives who are professionals, whether that's an attorney, a counselor, a group of other children whose parents are alcoholics, and they can talk about what it feels like if mommy drinks too much and she gets scary, then that's really a good place to be. And it's hard to think about where you're at right now, but you've got to start taking those steps to get there. Aha moments that goes off in people's heads all the time is your children will get to a point that this childhood that you have left them in feels normal. And it's normal to come home on a Tuesday and get drunk. And it's normal that on the weekends, all the adults come over and drink too much and we have to put ourselves to bed. And then daddy lays on the couch all weekend, right? Like those things become normal and a part of their childhood. And the urgency that we encourage people, your children's childhood is setting them up for the rest of their life.
And as you can tell by now, Rebecca and I are not therapists or lawyers, and we don't pretend to be. And I think that's another thing that's really important for us to mention with this sensitive topic is that we see so many people that come to us and not to their lawyer and not to their counselor, and they're looking for help. So hopefully what we're doing here with this heavy topic of addiction is telling you to reach out to someone. And if that's us, and we get you to the person that helps you navigate your alcoholic spouse and the custody arrangement and a lawyer and a therapist, we hope that's the case. But please, again, don't think that we're here giving you clinical, therapeutic, or legal advice. Hopefully what you see is our ability to get you to the people that you need. And sometimes that starts as a direct message on social media, a text message, or a phone call. We see you. You are out there. It is difficult, but you are not alone, and this is not the end.
I think that's really important.
Love doesn't always mean saying yes. Love doesn't also always mean saying it's okay. Love can manifest itself in a lot of different ways that include tough love, boundaries, accountability, and honesty. And at no point, if you're letting an addict abuse you or your children or neglect your responsibilities in a marriage or as a parent, are you loving yourself, your person, or your children.
That's great.